you are known as a huge television star.
Thank you, Alison.
A drummer for the Beach Boys.
Thank you, Alison.
You do incredible charitable work. Crime. I mean, I've never pegged you as a crime guy,
Yeah.
but you dove right in. Why? What interests you?
Well, I've had, 25 years ago, Dean Torrance from Jan and Dean. So I knew Jan and Dean from the Beach Boys. Turns out that Dean Torrance of Jan and Dean was best friends with Barry Keenan, who kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr. And Dean loaned him the seed money to get started, to buy a gun and this kind of stuff. So Dean turns to me at a concert 25 years ago and says, Stamos, do you produce? I didn't even know what producing really was. At that point, I was like early 20s, 19. I said, yeah, sure, Dean. He goes, well, my best friend kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr., and he wrote this in prison, and to pay me back, he gave me the rights to his life, and you want to go do something with it. Look at this thing. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, Frank Sinatra Jr. was kidnapped? I mean, that's the thing.
I didn't even know that Frank Sinatra Jr. was kidnapped. I mean, and this story was not a small story at the time. I mean, it was an international story.
But I think afterward, and we can talk about it, Mr. Sinatra did not want it talked about. In fact, the only reason why we're talking about it now is because he's dead. Because it would be like, Vinny Bagananando's here to see you, John.
Well, I'm going to want to ask you about that because you sort of did take a risk.
Well,
publicizing the story.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. But so I had the thing, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then Dean and I were doing a gig with the Beach Boys about 4 years ago. I said, whatever happened to that? He said, well, we tried to get it made, but they pitched it at Sony. They took it around to town, and I said, Frank didn't want this thing made. And subsequently, Barry has had his life. He says there were 3 hits. He got shot at 3 times over the years. The last being, they got so old, these guys, on Sinatra's deathbed, supposedly he said, get that guy. And then the hitman, the last time, was an older gentleman, and he had him in his sights, and his colostomy bag broke, and it foiled the thing. So that's how it's a long, fascinating story, right?
And not only is it fascinating, I mean, it talks about his life. You start to really like Barry, and he says that he was commanded by God to do this. You talked to him for a long time. Any truth to that? Do you believe after you talked to him?
Oh yeah, no, I did. I was first, and I still am trying to do this as a TV movie, a limited series. And I always sort of pitched it as the Marx Brothers meets the Coen Brothers, because it was this wacky kind of, he was goofy. But then having the time to really dive into it on a podcast, like 10 episodes, this is a guy who was mentally ill. Yeah. And mental illness was swept under the carpet at that time, and in the 40s and 50s. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is we're really shining a light on that.
So he talks about being commanded by God to kidnap, but God doesn't tell him who. Right. And one of the parts I love is his first thought is Bob Hope's son.
Yes, that's right.
Why doesn't he decide on Bob Hope's son?
Too patriotic.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob was too. That was he was the USO. He was America's comic. Sinatra, he figured people, he was involved with the mob. That would, people wouldn't care because he was a dirty mobster, Meanwhile, he didn't think about his own life,
Right. I mean, and he sort of thought it would just add to this mystique of Frank Sinatra, right? That his son was kidnapped. Yeah. Right? Did you get that sense?
Yes. Look, Barry he's an imperfect man trying to pull off the perfect crime. He's to this day.
This was not a perfect crime.
No. Well, yes, no, you're right. To this day, he's just taking shortcuts. I mean, he was a get rich quick, kind of guy. I wanted to show how desperate someone has to be to pull off this heinous crime. I mean, not only, look, I'm a father now, as you know, and at one point I was like, are we glorifying this? I want to make this clear that we're not. This is it was a sick man who did a terrible, terrible thing. I mean, that poor mother, Frank's mother, was 3 days praying.
Well, years later, I mean, when you speak to him and years later, does he have remorse for what he's done?
Yes, 100%.
And he sees that this was really a very serious, because he saw it as a way for Frank Sr. and Frank Jr. to be friends again. Yeah. He then explained it as, well, my dad needed the money because he had fallen on hard times, and his mother was depressed and suicidal. Yes. So in a way, Barry explains it as, I was really helping everyone around me. And what does he do with the money? He starts giving it away.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe that he thought that was his motive. I mean, he also wanted a seat at the big table, which I keep saying. He went to school at Uni High with Ryan O'Neal and Brolin and Jan and Dean. All these people around him were becoming famous and wealthy, and he was just this, you know, he's a very smart man, incredible memory. And he was at the time, he was one of the youngest on the stock exchange. His dad was in securities. And so he was get rich quick schemes all the way through, and he just bottomed out. And not only just lost all his parents' money, his friends' money, but he got addicted to, you know, alcohol and pills.
And he lost several people close to him.
Lost people, yeah, one tragedy after another. He finally met this girl, Shannon, and he said the voices stopped in my head, and it was really nice. And then she gets hit by a car.
Horrible.
Terrible.
Now, there's this interesting part that I love that sort of shows how imperfect this crime was. And so the FBI asked Sinatra, how much money do you have on hand? And he says like $1 million.
Cash.
Right, and Barry only asked for $240. Can you walk me through that?
Well, so they say to him, because they were expecting the call. First of all, they had set up all these separate calls. And one of them before this, the main call was they had to go to a gas station and get to this gas station on time. So, but there was a snowstorm. So Sinatra and the feds were a little late getting there. Barry calls the gas station, says, Frank Sinatra there? Frank Sinatra, get out of here, you know, slams it. Waits a few minutes, calls again. Yes, Frank Sinatra there. Listen, you son of a gun, if you call one more time on me, Frank Sinatra, what's the matter with you? Then he looks out. The feds and Sinatra come skating up. Sinatra gets out. Any calls for me?
Are you kidding?
Yeah, and the guy goes, what?
Oh, that's hilarious.
I mean, there's so many scenes like that, but
why does Barry only ask for $240?
So that's what he needed. That was his plan of operation. He was very specific. He knew he had all these investments, like into Westwood at the time when Westwood wasn't there. And he told me that when he was in jail, he was watching all these stocks go up. He had it all figured out. He was going to invest this much, pay this much back. All he needed was $240. The guy that he recruited to do the phone calls, he was an older gentleman, he was 42, who I want to play in the movie. His name was John Irwin, and he was dating Barry's mother. And he had this great rough voice. He looked like Clark Gable. And so he was and so Barry told him, look, do the script, say whatever's in the script, and, you know, and that'll be that. So Sinatra gets on and the feds say, tell him, just get on and say, how's my son? Good. I have $1 million. Just say that. So Dad, how's the son? He's okay. Good. I have $1 million. And John says, we need $240,000. No, first he said, we need 240, and they're like, 240 million. Are they crazy? We're going to get $200,000. And the feds were like, you know, like this. And Sinatra's, and he said, but I have $1 million. Well, it says here 240,000.
Oh my, I
mean,
love it.
It's just like, you know.
No, I mean, this is a comedy of errors. This really is. So tell me, I mean, you sat with the man for a couple days.
Well, I've been very close with him the last couple of years. I mean, we talk all the time. He's so excited to get his story out, and I think we're doing it in a classy way.
He talks about being honorable. So you spent a lot of time with him. What is your opinion? Is he an honorable guy? What is it about him? Has he changed? Was he never a bad guy?
Well, when he comes over, we send Billy to the park, you know, to your house. No, I'm kidding. He's you know, I don't think he was ever you know, evil. I think that he was, you know, he had voices telling him, and he believed those voices were real. He had a group of angels he called the committee, but I think he's redeemed himself. You know, it's 50 years now.
Yeah.
It's happened. You know, he's done incredible work with prison reform and prisoners. He's done incredible work in the substance abuse area with AA, and you know, he's helped a lot of young people. So I think he's redeemed himself. I asked him, you know, because he talks about getting to that state of grace, back to the state of grace.
Yeah.
I said, you reach it, Barry? And he said, yeah, I got my grandkids, but I'm still a work in progress.
Is he still very religious?
No, not at all. No, he turned his back on church.
Interesting. I love you in this crime lane.
You do?
Are we going to see? Yes, I do.
Well,
are we going to see more of it?
I'm going to ask you, because if this works, I'll do more, like the grand scheme. I need another crime. Do you have something?
Come on, John.
All right. The problem is I'll never be this close to another criminal, I don't think.
Well, that's not
never know.
necessarily true. You might.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing is that these stories are so riveting.
Saget.
You want to
He's
do
right
that?
on the
You want to
verge
do that? You want to do that?
He's on
All
the
right.
verge of something, I know.
Bob, don't say anything. I got you. Don't say a word. I've actually seen you perform with the Beach Boys. And what's great about this story is this is like a lifelong dream of yours. I mean, these guys were your idols, right?
That's right, yeah. I used to, Mike Love's parents lived by my parents, and I would drive my dad's El Camino over, and I'd look through the window at the gold and platinum records, like peeping in, kind of like what you did today.
Okay.
To my house.
The difference is I'm not obsessed with you. I mean, I'm curious, obviously.
No, it's been great, and look, I'm going out on tour with them soon, starting on the 15th or 16th. The world, especially our country, needs this music right now.
Yeah.
They need, you know, when I've done some shows with them, you could just see people are just ready to like, oh, let's put that away, and you know, let's smile again, let's dance, let's laugh, let's have memories. Wouldn't it be nice? Fun, fun, fun.
Right.
I mean, it's optimistic, you know, music, and it's positive, and the world needs it.
Well, and it's the one thing that doesn't divide people.
No, exactly.
You know, music has no political affiliation. It doesn't take sides. It doesn't care where you live or what you look like.
Yeah.
It's music, and it heals
music.
the soul. Yeah.
100%. And this music, I call it heart music because, that's why you see like little kids, they know every word because it bypasses the brain and goes boom. So wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
You know, God only knows. And yeah, next to my wife and my kids, the greatest thing to ever happen. The first time I played with them was in D.C. at 1984 at the Washington Monument. And I'd done a couple of encores, and they said, why don't you come do, you know, 5 or 6 songs? There was other guests on there. There was a million people at a real million, not a Trump million.
Yeah. A real million.
Yeah.
A real million.
Can you believe? Oh, well, first was in Philadelphia, and then we got on a train and then went to D.C. and played. Crazy. Jimmy Page was playing guitar.
I mean, that would have been enough for you, but the fact
Any of
that
it's
you get
enough
to
for me.
do it all the
I
time is
know, it's
incredible.
Yeah, and for a long time I was like, I should just let them. People love them, and you know, my main motive, you know, for so many years was to introduce their music to a younger generation because they weren't playing them on the radio anymore.
Right.
So I had them on Full House. I had them on another show even before Full House, and so that's the only place kids can really, you know, in these movies you can hear their music, but yeah.
Actually, I think you add a very nice element to it. I think it makes them fresh and new and interesting, and it brings together generations.
Well,
that's what I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I felt younger about 10, 15. I was, you know, like the only boy on stage. Now I'm getting, you know.
John Stamos, you do
Yeah.
not age. You do not age.
Well,
It's true.
I drink the blood of Rob Lowe.
Okay, good for you.
So that's-